Hi, and a very good morning for those who are watching right now on StreamYard and also through Facebook and our YouTube channel. So, welcome everybody, and a very good morning. Now, please bear with me because I'm just going to invite our followers from Instagram. So, let's get them on too. So, bear with me a moment. And a very good morning to our followers on Instagram as well. So we are all ready, I can see. Yes, so very good morning. We are live on Saturday, the 11th of April, and welcome to Solving the Cost of Living Crisis webinar. Now, I know there are a lot of families out there, not just in the UK, but the rest of the world, who are really, really struggling. So I hope by you listening to today's webinar, you'll get a lot from that as well. I mean, I know there's families with children who are even taking on second jobs just to meet the demand of the increase of prices going up, things like food, gasoline, day-to-day bills. It's just unbelievable. So pen and paper ready, because there is going to be a lot of information that will be shared with you today. Now, let me introduce myself, just in case you think, well, who are you? Well, my name is Simone, and I'm head of the Advocate Network Department. And as I said, lots of information is going to be shared today. Now, there will be handouts, which we'll be explaining further on down in the slides, where you will be able to find those handouts along with this presentation, because it's being recorded as well, on our platform, and they will be available in the next few days as well. Thank you so much for submitting your questions. You may find your question will be answered throughout the presentation. However, if you happen to have any additional questions after this presentation, don't worry. Anyone who has attended, I'll have all your names and your email addresses as well. I will be emailing you directly with a form so you can add additional questions from today, and there will be a post-webinar, should I say, an additional Q&A session with Andy Benson, who's head of Ross Media, and today's speaker as well. We will be including links, so you will see that in the upcoming slides as well. So there's going to be lots of information shared. So as I said, I hope you got your pen and paper ready, and let's rock and roll. But before we do that, well, let me introduce you to our speaker. He is the founder and president of the Republic of Old Souls. It's Ian Clifford. And good morning, Ian. How are you today?
Well, good day to everybody. I think we've got people from different countries on the webinar, so welcome to everybody. And I'm encouraged to see that the info wars are gradually shifting. As probably many of you are aware, there's been a huge amount of negative propaganda about me and about what used to be Matrix Freedom, and also about Republic of Old Souls, put out there by the very people that are causing the same stress that you are experiencing. If you're on this monopoly board of commerce, if you're playing the game, and it's difficult because it is a difficult game to play, the very same people that are focusing their attention on me and have been for nearly 20 years, undermining my reputation, the very same people are causing the problems that most people are experiencing in making ends meet. There is a control agenda. Anybody who steps outside of the paradigm of the control paradigm, a target, and that's why they target me. So if you're here for the very first time and you haven't been aware of my backstory, if you're not aware of it, there is a website dedicated to it, what's going on with it, why all these negative propaganda stories, internet websites and media coverage and all the rest of it. If you're unaware of all of those things, we will share a link to a website if you're interested to know the background. Now, all I can tell you is that if you are aware of others that are over the target, i.e. they're doing something they've got something which is it's a countermeasure to the control agenda. Those people get targeted, and they generally, the first thing that happens is their reputation is damaged by propaganda. That's been going on with me for many years now. 16 years very intensely. It actually started 20 years ago. So if you are new on this webinar and you don't know my backstory, and you are going on the internet and you're seeing a load of propaganda on there, ask yourself the question: if there was so much negative propaganda about me, if it were true, why is it we've got members in at least 6 countries? The numbers of members is growing. What we're outlining here is all about freedom. I don't need to do this. I've said this many, many times over and over again. I do not need to spend 7 days a week working on the freedom plan. If all I wanted to do was to make money, I'm very well capable of doing that without a huge organization that we've got with, all sorts of battles and wars with the establishment. I could just make money myself, and I wouldn't have to bother with 7 day a week shifts, which is what I do. The reason I do this is because I do not want to be controlled, and I don't want you, if you are a freedom seeker, to be controlled. I want you to have an option. I want you to have another plan that you can follow, another pathway. And that's why I do what I do. I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it because there isn't really a realistic freedom plan anywhere in the world that I am aware of. What we have been developing, what I've been working on for many years, is a very realistic freedom plan. We're going to be doing a webinar on it shortly, within the next month, that I'm going to go into it in detail about how it all works, why it's viable, why many people will join it. Not everybody, but many will join it and get a huge amount of benefit from it. But in the immediate term, there is a very deliberate squeeze of people's budgets going on. This isn't random. There's nothing going on in the world that is random. I realized this a long time ago. Every single war, every single crisis, every single event that's going on this monopoly board of commerce is not a random event. It's all orchestrated. And, it's very difficult to realize that if you're watching mainstream media, because their job is to mislead everybody and push false narratives out. If you are believing the government, then their job is also to push false narratives out and put false stories out and get people to go down different pathways. So it's very difficult if you're kind of in the mainstream media and listening to government figures and reading newspapers and going on the internet, which mostly is censored, or even going into AI, which is massively censored on the answers it gives you. It's very, very difficult to actually figure out what's going on. I've spoken at length about UN Agenda 2030. I've spoken at length about the transhuman agenda, which isn't a sci-fi, conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat kind of thing. It's a very real agenda that's going on. All of these things are all running in parallel. UN Agenda 2030 is probably the most egregious problem that we're all facing and we're all trying to deal with. But many, many people out there don't even know about it. They have no concept of what it's all about, really. It's nothing to do with sustainable goals. It's nothing to do with protecting the environment. It's all to do with control. Now, one of the biggest ways that they control the majority of the world population, the overwhelming majority of the world population, is by getting them to play Monopoly without realizing that they're actually playing an artificial game. We're going to be talking about that today, and we're going to be talking about how you can win the game by using advanced moves that aren't theory, they're fact, and there is a track record to back them up. So before we get into that, just one last word about why you're here. Hopefully you're here because you want the edge, you want a strategy that is going to take you from wherever you are now into a much better place, where you can operate with freedom, where you can operate with the ability to make your own choices, where you won't be constrained by the worldwide controlling force, because it is a worldwide controlling force. If you're interested in those things, then you're definitely in the right place. We've got a series of protocols that have been in development for some time. They're very well researched. They work. This is one of the reasons why the cabal, the worldwide controlling force, has tried to jail me twice, because they don't want you to know what I'm going to explain to you today. Everything I'm explaining to you today is perfectly lawful. There's nothing here that's edgy. There's nothing here that I can't verify as being 100% lawful. There's nothing I'm going to talk to you about today that is that you could ever get into any trouble with if you follow these pathways that I'm going to talk about today. A lot of people get very afraid when new information is shared, but you shouldn't be afraid. This should be a session that liberates you from wherever your mind is at the moment, whatever you believe in at the moment about how the game of Monopoly works. I'm going to show you some things today that will probably cause you a great deal of thought if you haven't been on my webinars before. I know we've got new people on today, so I can't refer to things I've already said many times on previous webinars. So I've got a little bit of a difficult job in that I don't know what you know. If I knew what you knew, or everything that you know, or the audience, then I could position my presentation to you, and I'd know exactly where the gaps are, and I could fill those gaps. But I have to assume that you don't know anything, because that's the only way I can do it. So if you have heard me say things before, if you have heard me outline things before, it's not because I'm just a stuck record. It's because I'm assuming that new people on our webinar don't know some of the subjects that I'm going to talk about. So forgive me if you've heard me talk about some of these things before, but it never hurts to have a refresher. I've read things and reviewed things many times, and every time I read and review them, I often pick up something new. So if you have experienced me talking about this subject before, you may pick up something new that you didn't know before. So let's get on with it, shall we? The invisible crisis. So if you imagine that there is an agenda behind everything that is going on, how do you, if you are one of those that is there running a plan, a control plan, if you are one of those that's running this plan, this worldwide control agenda, if you were in that group, put yourself into that position where you have been recruited to roll out a control agenda, how would you do that? Would you be able to sell to the masses things that they don't really want, and unless those things that you're going to roll out are seen to be benefits? Now, all around us, they're rolling out what things that appear to be beneficial, when in fact they're not beneficial. And we probably would never have wanted them before, but we've chosen to go down pathways because the governments and the big corporations are rolling things out that appear to be for our benefit, even though we never would have chosen them unless there were problems to solve. Now, one of the biggest problems to solve is the invisible crisis, which is, it's very easy to get your head into this and to realize what's going on. And if you imagine how much revenues you bring in every year, if you took the average of the last, say, 5 years of revenues, call them pay, call them profit, whatever is coming in to your finances and whatever's going out, what's happening is there's more going out than coming in real terms, because of inflation. The cost of fuel going up and up and up. The cost of mortgage interest going up. The cost of taxes going up and up. The cost of food in the supermarkets going up. Nearly everything that we consume or we're obligated to finance is going up, but our revenues are not necessarily, not for everybody, going up in line with that. So there's a squeeze. You have this, and this is why so many families are feeling the cost of living crisis is very real. It's, you know, it's every week they are trying very hard to balance the budget, to try and finance the expenses for the family. And it's only going to get worse because it's part of the plan. And you might be thinking, well, why would anybody want to make it difficult for the world population? And the answer to that question is that they want to control everyone on the planet. And if you can get them into a state of fear, if you can offer them solutions that they never would have chosen before to the problems they're experiencing, which the controllers are creating, now you can get compliance. And they've been doing this for centuries. So you see, the reason why mortgages are going up in price, the reason why taxes are being imposed, the reason why there's inflation running out of control in many areas, it's not random. It's all part of the control agenda. Put people into stress and then roll out solutions like digital ID, like centralized digital currency, the digital concentration camp, and then people who never would have wanted it before will actually say, bring it to me, I need it because it's going to solve my problem. And that is exactly what's going on. If you play the game of Monopoly without really understanding the rules of the game, you are going to be controlled even more. So my job today is to show you how to play the game with advanced moves that they don't really want you to know. Let's move it on. It starts with this. And I love to use the analogy of the Monopoly board, because when you research why was the game of Monopoly introduced in the first place, when you realize it was brought in to show us all that this is exactly what we're doing day by day. We're all playing an artificial game of Monopoly without realizing it. You know, we come into the world, mums and dads try, if we're in a stable family, try and look after us. We get to the age of majority and we start playing the game of Monopoly without realizing that we're actually playing a game. We think it's real. We think everything we're doing has got substance. It's all real. Everybody else around us is doing it. So it's got to be real. Why would anybody question it? Everybody else is doing it. So you never look into it. You never actually question, how does this commerce system really work? Well, I'm going to try and make it as simple as to comprehend as possible. I think everyone on this webinar can agree. Hopefully everybody is real. And we haven't got AI on here. We haven't got robots watching this webinar. If we're all living and breathing men and women, which I hope we are, all of us on this webinar are, then we know what substance is. Yeah, you can touch yourself. You can look in the mirror. You can see yourself. You can feel your heart beating. You've got blood coursing through your veins, hopefully. And if that is true, you are a living man or woman. Now, if you take that and say, well, what is actually running through the body to keep it running? What is going on that keeps it running along? It's energy, yeah? So that is something real. You can believe that, yeah? Without energy, the body couldn't run. Now, if you take that energy and you put it into your labor, you put it into your, whatever it is you're doing to bring in revenues, that labor is really energy. Whatever it is, whether you're thinking, whether you're doing, it's energy. What they've done is they've created an artificial game board where the birth certificate creates a player piece that sits on the Monopoly board. It looks like it's us. It has a name that we adopt and we use over and over and over again because they want to convince us that the player piece on the Monopoly board is actually the living man or woman. But of course it isn't. It is an artificial player piece. The registration of the birth certificate, which there's so many theories out there about what this really is. It doesn't really matter what people believe, apart from one thing. That one thing is it's not the living man or woman, right? So if you start with that belief that it's not you, it's not really a belief, you can prove it in the law. The player piece, the citizen, the person, the birth certificate construct is artificial. If you can get your head into that and then realize that you are not that player piece, but without the player piece on the Monopoly board, you cannot play the game of Monopoly. Because the only way to play Monopoly in the way, if you follow the system that's been introduced by those that control the world, is to use that player piece, use that person, the birth certificate name, the name on the bank card, the name on the passport, the name on the driving license, the name you put on all the contracts. That name, that player piece is not you. They want you to believe that it is you because they want to join you to it. But the problem is that there is already a joinder there, whether you like it or whether you don't. There is a joinder between the living man, woman and the player piece, and that joinder is called agency. You see, the living man, woman became the agent of the body corporate, which is the birth certificate entity, right from the moment that the mum and dad registered the birth certificate into the system of commerce, which is this game of Monopoly. So on this slide, what I want you to take away is that you are not the player piece, the person, the citizen, the birth certificate construct. That is an artificial player piece. It's not you, but you, the living man, woman, are the agent for it. And if you are the agent for it, you are liable for everything it does on the Monopoly board. So its debts, its taxes, its following legislation, anything that's going on the artificial Monopoly board, the agent for it is the living man, woman. So if you can take away that from this slide, it's going to help us with the slides going forward. Now, one more thing, the player piece, the person, the citizen, the birth certificate construct has been given special powers. And those special powers are the powers of signature. Substantially important. The power of the signature. Every time you intend to make a payment, enter into a mortgage, enter into a credit card, enter into a loan, the signature is very vitally important. It is what creates the credit, the debt that is being used on the Monopoly board. We're going to come back to that. But on this slide, what I want you to take away is that you're not the player piece. The player piece is separate from you. The player piece is on the Monopoly board. It's an artificial game. You can't take your birth certificate out to dinner and have a chat with it, can you? You can't call it up on the phone, send it messages on WhatsApp and expect to get a reply. It's not you. So if we can establish that, that's one of the foundations that we need to move on from there and build from there on that with that foundation knowledge. Next slide. So the living man versus the birth certificate. The identity that we all use, including me, for many, many years, I used to go around saying, if anybody asked me, what's your name, Ian? I'd say my name is Ian Clifford Stamp, because that is the name on the birth certificate. But that isn't me. That name belongs to the birth certificate. Stamp, which is what I thought was my family name. That name actually is registered to the Crown. It's their name. It's registered to the cabal, the people that are trying to control us. That name and that birth certificate construct is a registered entity. It is a birth certificate construct. It is a trust that is registered to the very same people that are trying to control us. A lot of people will say it's the straw man. I'm indifferent about the name straw man because there's a lot of belief systems about straw man that can take people down a free man on the land, a sovereign, OPCA is what they call it. It can get you into a lot of trouble going around talking about the straw man, but it may help you to realize that the birth certificate construct, the name on the birth certificate, the family name is not your name. And I know that's going to shock a lot of you on this webinar. Your name is the first and second name or third name if you've got more than 3 and it's Christian names in the law. So my name is Ian Clifford. Yeah, that's the 2 Christian names stamped. I haven't used now for several years. That name belongs to the British Crown, where it was registered. So what they've done is they've got us to use the birth certificate name as if it were us. And they've got us into this agency trap because the living man woman becomes the agent for the birth certificate construct right from the moment of registration of the birth certificate by our mum and dad. So they've got us under agency, and we don't know this. And all the people out there that are going around saying, I'm not the straw man, and the straw man, you know, don't worry about me. If there's ever a court case against the straw man, the person, it's not me, so I can avoid the consequences. These debts and taxes aren't me because I'm a living man or woman, and the debts and taxes only belong to the straw man or the person or the citizen. And there's a huge number of people out there who believe all they've got to do is say, no, that's not me, and they can walk away from the liability. You can't. There is a way of doing it, and I'm going to show you that as we go through this webinar. But what they've done is an invisible trap. It is the trap of agency. The living man woman is the agent for the birth certificate construct. The birth certificate construct is the principal. It's the principal player on the monopoly board. The living man woman as the agent is equally as responsible for and liable for everything that the player piece, the citizen, the person is doing on this monopoly board through the law of agency. It's an invisible trap. Most people don't realize it. I've read and written lots of research papers on it in the last few months about the trap of agency, and still a lot of people are still going around believing all they've got to do is say that that birth certificate entity is not me and I'm not responsible for anything it's doing on the monopoly board. It really isn't as simple as that, but there are solutions, and we're going to look at them as we go through the webinar. Next slide. So the artificial board. I want you to imagine that you were actually playing Monopoly. You were sitting at a Monopoly table. You know, you've got a table in front of you with a Monopoly board on it, and you're sitting there with your friends, your family, and you're actually moving a player piece around the board. And on the board was a load of notes in front of you. This is your credit or your currency that you're going to use that as you go round and round and round the board. Let me introduce something else to you, which might be a surprise to you. It was a surprise to me when I did all the research on this many years ago. Everything on that Monopoly board is bankrupt. There is no substance to anything on the Monopoly board, and it is all bankrupt. It is all artificial. Every company is an artificial construct. Every government is an artificial construct. Everything, every title to everything is an artificial construct. So what we're doing is we're playing this game of Monopoly. The living man woman is sitting at the table, and we're all pushing a piece round the board as if it were real. But on that Monopoly board itself, in 1933, something which I believe in the last 100 years is probably the most significant event that very few people talk about, and that is the bankruptcy of the United States. And the bankruptcy of the United States caused everything over the next 15 to 20 years. Everything on this Monopoly board became bankrupt. And it's very, very deliberate that everything on the Monopoly board is bankrupt. There's something else which I was talking about on an interview I did recently, which is if you look in your bank account and you see that you've got a balance, a positive, what you believe to be a positive balance. If you've got an investment account or a pension and you look at the statement and it's got a positive balance, those positive balances that you believe are actually negatives. They're all negatives. There's nothing on the Monopoly board that is a positive. It is all negative. Why? You might be thinking, well, that sounds crazy, Ian. So why is that? The reason why is because everything on the Monopoly board is a debt. If you look at the World Debt Clock, if you go on the internet, type in World Debt Clock, you will see that it is there's a value on there which is a negative value, which is it's getting higher and higher and higher. And inversely, the debt is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It never comes down. It can never ever come down, because everything on the monopoly board is a debt, and everything on the monopoly board is bankrupt. Now, if you understand what bankruptcy is, it basically is that there are creditors on one side and there are debtors on the other side, and the creditors are owed by the debtors. So if you can put your mind into that, get your mind straight on what that actually means. If everything on the monopoly board is bankrupt, that means that there must be creditors to the bankruptcy on the board, yeah? If everything on the board is bankrupt since 1933, House Joint Resolution 192, as read out by James Traficant, the senator for Ohio, who said it's the world's biggest reorganization of bankruptcy in history, and it still is. And if you realize that everything is dollar-based, so the world reserve currency is the dollar, when the United States goes into bankruptcy, and it's still in bankruptcy today, by the way, and everything on the monopoly board is negative, it's a debt, and the debt can only expand, it can never contract. So all these politicians who stand up at election time saying, vote for me and I'll reduce the debt, they can't, because everything on the monopoly board is based on debt. There is no positives on the board. It's all negatives. Now, if you understand accounting, just a little tiny bit, in accounting, there is a balance sheet. So on one side of the balance sheet, in any company, in any set of books, you have two sides of a ledger, double entry bookkeeping, yeah? So on one side, you have a debt. So on the other side, you therefore must have a credit, because you can't have debt without credit, yeah? If everything on the monopoly board is in debt following the bankruptcy of the United States, and all of the so-called currency is debt-based, then there must be credit on the other side of the balance sheet somewhere. So the question that I want you to ask yourself, ask it now. Who is that debt owed to? If there is, let's just make the numbers easy, $400 trillion of world debt on the Monopoly Board of Commerce, who is it owed to? So just think about it for a moment. Now, if you've been on my webinars before, you'll know the answer. But if you're new to my webinars, I'm going to give you the answer. It's owed back to the people. A couple of slides ago, I said that we've got energy coursing through our body. So the energy that's coursing through our body is transferred onto this artificial game board, just like the game of Monopoly. We transfer our energy onto the game board, and we become the creditors to all of that debt. So the other side of the balance sheet is the living men and women. We are the creditors to the bankruptcy. 97% of all of the currency that's running around the monopoly board, the world monopoly board, $400 trillion or thereabouts of world debt, is all owed back to the people. And the whole game board is artificial. So all it really is ledgers. There's no substance to it. Can you imagine trying to pick up a digital bank payment? Can you pick it up? Can you take it from your left hand and put it in the right hand? You can with a piece of gold. You can with a note, but you can't pick up a digital bank transfer from your left hand and put it in the right hand, yeah? It's all artificial. It's all digital. It's all based on ledgers. And those ledgers are getting bigger and bigger and bigger on one side. That's the debt side. Never goes down. But on the other side of the ledger is energy. So think of the monopoly board as a playing board that is running on our energy. And that is what is going on. If you say, okay, Ian, well, I'm going to challenge that, because I know that when I pay someone, somebody sends me a bill, I'm going to pay them, right? And I'm going to I'm going to, make them happy. I'm going to pay them the bill. I want you to think about that. When you get a bill for the gas bill, the electric bill, the mortgage bill, the whatever bill, the tax bill, if everything on the Monopoly board is negative, then that bill is also negative as well, yeah? So when you get your gas bill, electric bill, tax bill, any bill, mortgage bill, that bill, which by the way is a bill of exchange, is a negative. So everything that comes to you is a negative. And the only way that you can discharge it is by creating new currency, new credit to put on the Monopoly board. And that new credit that you put on the Monopoly board adds to world debt. And there's more energy put on the board that is owed back to you. So you see, the whole game board, you cannot pay anything on this Monopoly board. You can only discharge it with new debt. That new debt is a transference of energy from the living man woman onto the player, onto the Monopoly board through the citizen, through the person, through the birth certificate construct, which by the way is a banker. And we'll come back to that as we move through. Next slide. House Joint Resolution 192, I mentioned it on the earlier slide. It's when the whole game of Monopoly changed. Prior to 1933, there was actually money of substance. You could go into the bank with your notes and say, give me the gold, that, the value of these notes that I'm bringing into you, I want you to give me the gold, to the same value as the notes. And the bank would have to do that. Well, that all changed in 1933. What they did was they took a mortgage out over the energy of the people. They took a mortgage out over all of the property, all of the assets that the people used to own. They took a mortgage out and everything then moved into this a world of artificial, no substance world of Monopoly. And those that control the Monopoly board, they hold the mortgage. And they also appointed the United States Treasury as the bankruptcy trustee for the whole board. Now, if you've been unfortunate enough to have been through bankruptcy, or people that have been through bankruptcy, I'm going to explain to you what the role of the bankruptcy trustee is. The bankruptcy trustee is there to collect from the creditors and collect from the debtors and distribute to the creditors. So collecting the debt and paying out to the creditors. That is the job of a bankruptcy trustee. So on a bankrupt system, which is the whole Monopoly board, the world Monopoly board is all bankrupt, the United States Treasury's job is to collect from the debtors and pay back to the creditors. And we've already established on the previous slide that the people are the creditors. So I'm going to ask a question now. How many times have you claimed your credit back in your life so far? If you're already doing our programs, maybe you've started. But if you're new to this webinar, have you actually made a claim on your energy? Have you ever put a claim in to get your energy back? The answer to that question is probably not. Because A, you didn't know you put your energy on the board, and B, even if you did, you wouldn't know probably how to do it. So the world population is overwhelmed by people who have got energy on the board who don't know that they can get it back. And what we're going to talk about through this webinar is how you can lawfully get that energy back and then reuse it. You can recycle it. You can put it all back on the board and recycle it, spend it and recoup it. So you'll get used to me. I gradually build things up, as Sims knows. She's been on hundreds of my webinars. It's like a story with me, gradually building up. Next slide. Okay, so how does your energy get onto the Monopoly board? Well, the answer is signature. You see, a signature is a confirmation. It's like a contract. It's like an intention. So when you intend to pay, we've already established you can't really pay What you're actually doing is you're issuing a new promise. So your signature is like a promise. So when you go and make a bank payment, you're making a promise to pay in the future. When you sign a mortgage contract, you're making a promise to pay in the future. When you sign a credit card or a loan, you're making a promise to pay in the future. So bank transactions of all natures, or all of the descriptions of bank transactions, are promises to pay. And the promise is ratified by the signature. And you see, what you do when you make these promises is you are transferring the energy from the living mammon onto the monopoly board through the artificial player piece, which is the person, the citizen, this birth certificate construct, that is actually a banker. We're going to spend a bit of time on that later on. So through the banker, you are issuing energy that becomes a security. And that's a word that a lot of people don't use in their day-by-day vocabulary. That they don't go around saying, "Oh yeah, I'm perpetually and permanently issuing securities." That's what I do all the time, because people don't know what it is. But a security is just a debt. It's just a promise to pay in the future. And what the banks do is they take your signature like it is a deposit of energy. And I use this because I think it brings the example home. Let's imagine that you were at a dinner party, and it was one of those networking events where you sat at a table, you don't know who the people are at the table, but you happen to sit at a table and everybody else on the table was a banker. And you got into conversation and you asked the usual question. So what do all you guys do? Oh yeah, we're all bankers, they say. And you say, oh, that's very interesting. I've just taken out a mortgage. Can you explain to me how you lent? If it was the bank that you took the mortgage out and all the bankers are at this table, can you explain to me how did you make that mortgage happen? And they would say to you, well, it's easy. We take deposits in from our customers and we lend them out. And you probably, unless you had been on my webinars, you wouldn't doubt that. You'd think that that's perfectly logical. They take deposits in and they lend them out. And in the middle, they make some interest because they're taking a risk, yeah? So they deserve to get some interest because they're taking a risk. Because if I don't pay them back the mortgage, they're going to have to pay all the depositors back. So therefore, the banks deserve to get interest on the mortgages, loans, and credit cards, yeah? But here's the shocker. When you get a mortgage, they have no money to lend because there is no money. Remember, there's no money. There's only debt. There's only ledgers. They haven't got a safe with some gold in it. All they've got is the ability to take in a deposit, which is a promise to pay in the future. That's all they can do. So when you go and get a loan, credit card, or a mortgage, or even make a bank payment, you are making something brand new happen. You are creating a brand new security. So a mortgage, for example, you sign the mortgage contract, the bank says, thank you for your deposit. That's depositing energy into their system. And they match it on the other side of their balance sheet with a liability. So they take your deposit in as an asset, and then they match it on their balance sheet with a liability. That's called ex nihilo credit creation. They never started with any money. There is no money. All they did was take in your deposit. They call it a deposit, by the way. And they match it on the other side of their balance sheet with a debt. And that is how world debt goes up, because you've now increased world debt, but the bank didn't have anything to lend. So every mortgage, loan, credit card, even bank payments are brand new. When you make a bank payment, you are not transferring money, because there is no money, from your account to somebody else's account. What's going on is you're creating a brand new promise to pay. You're transferring a brand new amount of energy onto this artificial game board called Monopoly. And that is why world debt never comes down, because every transaction increases world debt. It's an ever expanding amount of world debt. Everybody is increasing it through their bank payments, through their mortgages, through their credit cards, through their loans, and then the governments are increasing it with government spending. And this is why, if you go on the World Debt Clock, you'll never see the numbers going in reverse. They only ever get bigger and bigger and bigger. Next slide. So you see, in order to make the game board work, those that control the game of Monopoly, they had to put banks in the system who operate with a special capacity. And that special capacity is a nominee. The banks are operating as nominees. Now, if you look into what a nominee really is, a nominee is a fiduciary. A fiduciary for who? A fiduciary, a trustee for the living man, woman that's transferred their energy through the birth certificate construct, the person, the citizen, that is now putting this energy onto the Monopoly board. And what the banks do is there are layers of banks. It's like a hierarchy of banks. So down the bottom of the banking hierarchy, you've got the clearing banks. So they're the banks that you've probably got your bank account with, your mortgage with, your loan, your credit card. So when you set all those up, when you create those through your signature, what the banks do is they're operating as a trustee for you. And what they do is they take your deposits, which is your promises to pay in the future. And then what they do is they create on the other side of their balance sheet a matching liability. That is then sold. So the clearing banks, who are down the bottom of the banking pyramid, sell your energy as a security to one layer up in the pyramid, which is the investment banks. And all of the investment banks pretty much operate in the United States. Even if there are investment banks in the country that you're living in, there will be a correspondent in New York, in the United States system. And most of them operate from New York. So you see, we get the question on nearly every single webinar. It's like, I don't live in the United States. What is this bankruptcy of the United States got to do with me? And how can we operate in this dollar system? We don't use the dollars here. We use the yen. We use the Swiss franc. We use the Canadian dollar, the Australian dollar, the British pound. So what is this Ian talking about the United States? The reason why I talk about it is because it's a one world system and it all goes back to the dollar. So no matter where you are, if you're making bank payments, getting mortgages, credit cards, loans, paying taxes, earning a revenue from whatever it is you do, somewhere in the background, it's going to be all traded by what I call the gods of the universe, the investment bankers that operate in New York. And that's what's going on. So the investment banks are trading your energy. They're buying and selling bonds, all financed by your energy. And guess what they do in order to justify the trading of your energy? The investment banks, which are, by the way, debtors, they're also bankrupt. They have to pay taxes for the use of your energy. And they pay taxes to the United States Treasury, because the United States Treasury is the bankruptcy trustee for the entire world Monopoly board. When you make a bank payment, enter into a mortgage, whether it's discharged or not, a credit card or a loan, your signature then gets abandoned. Unless you've been on my webinars, you will not be recouping the energy, which, by the way, is converted to tax. Next slide. Now, in order to prove that what I've just told you is absolutely 100% true, and I've recently, I believe, won a debate with a guy called Dan Needle, who is allegedly, reportedly, one of the UK's most prominent tax experts, who's been attacking me for the last few months, writing blogs and putting malicious content out on the internet. And I got into dialogue with Dan Needle. And in fact, going forward, there's a lot more to be said about Dan Needle, which I'll reserve for another webinar. But I sent him all my research on exactly how this system works. Not just my theory, not just what I believe. I actually sent in all of the evidence. And if you go to the Ecclesia Law Institute, there is a research paper that I've recently put together, which is called Signature Credit, Could It Win the Nobel Prize? It's also on our Telegram channels. Now, in that research paper, there are 13 sections that break down every single step of what I call signature credit recoupment, which is what we're going to be talking about in a few slides' time. In that document, I prove without any doubt that the investment banks are paying taxes on the use of your energy, the use of my energy, the use of Sims' energy, the use of the world population's energy. And they pay taxes on a tax module called the 945 tax module. And on average, there's something between $50 and $100 billion a year of taxes that the investment banks are paying for the use of our energy. That 50 to 100 billion a year, because it does go up and down year by year, is what we are owed back, what the people are owed back. Most of it is paid on tax modules by the investment banks outside of the 945 tax ledger. But the 945 tax ledger is the priority tax ledger. It is the one that the IRS has to treat as priority. We'll come back to that. So you see, if anybody wants to debate me on what I say to be true, I want them to read my paper, Signature Credit, Could It Win the Nobel Prize? Or Signature Credit Recoupment, Could It Win the Nobel Prize? And then come and debate me. You probably won't if you read that paper. Now, the IRS, the United States Treasury, they have hundreds of millions of taxpayers. So they run algorithmic systems. And they have an algorithm called the 810 algorithm that checks everything. If you ever want to make a recoupment of signature credit, we're going to walk through how to do that in a moment. Their algorithm is going to check it out. And if you don't follow the rules exactly how the algorithm wants you to, or how it's checking for compliance, you won't get the signature credit recoupment. So you've got to know the game. You've got to know the steps. Because if you follow the steps, you get the signature credit recoupment. Next slide. So you see, if you are struggling, or you may be struggling going forward, or you just want a better lifestyle, because you might not be struggling, you might just want a better lifestyle. If you look at the reality that you are on this webinar and the overwhelming majority of the world population doesn't know what I'm talking about, you are in a very privileged position. This knowledge is arguably the most valuable piece of knowledge that you could ever get in terms of playing Monopoly on this artificial Monopoly board. This piece of knowledge will only ever be used by a tiny percentage of the world population. About 0.01% of the world population can actually do what I'm explaining to you. And the reason why is because between 50 and $100 billion a year is the maximum that can be recouped. Because you can't recoup more than the taxes that the investment banks are paying each year. That is our budget. When you do the numbers, that's about 0.01% of the world population that is of adult age, say between 35 and 65. So if you're on this webinar, you are one of those 0.01% that is very privileged to know what I'm explaining. It took me years to discover all this. Not only to discover it, but to prove it works. So let's imagine that your energy that you've already put on the Monopoly board, mortgages from the age of 18, loans, credit cards, bank payments, deductions from your wages. Yeah, because all of those things are what we determine as abandoned credit. You put your energy on there, that credit is really energy. The investment banks are paying taxes to use it. Those taxes that they are paying on the 945 tax modules are owed back to you. So you've got all of that abandoned energy sitting on the Monopoly board right now. Just imagine if you can recoup that, and then you could spend it and then recoup it again, and then spend it and then recoup it again. That's exactly what is the opportunity that you have in front of you. Between 50 and $100 billion a year collectively in our community is up there waiting to be recouped through tax recoupment. Next slide. Now, here's one of the secrets that I openly talk about, and I put it in all of my research papers. In fact, all of my research papers are open source. I could have easily created this system, which is, by the way, I call it the Clifford Protocol, and I could have kept it all secret. I could have said, it's taken me years and years and years to research all this and put all this together, so I'm never going to tell anybody how it works. No, I don't do that. If you want to go and find out how it works, it's all in my research papers, all open source, because I don't believe that you can really own. You can't own knowledge, yeah? You can only share it. Now, I also know that the majority of people out there won't know how to put all this together, because it ain't easy to put it all together, I can assure you. The first thing that you need to do if you want to recoup signature credit energy via the tax system is you must put a new player piece on the Monopoly board. That new player piece is a 98 series international grantor trust. So imagine that you're sitting at the Monopoly board. You've got the person, the citizen, the birth certificate construct. That's the player piece that you've always used to move it round and round the board. What you're going to do now is you're going to put another piece on the Monopoly board. So now you've got two pieces on this Monopoly board. You've got the player that you've always used, the player piece, which is the citizen, the birth certificate construct, and now you've got a new piece, which is the 98 series grantor trust. It, by the way, is an artificial construct, but it's got a substantial difference in how it operates to the person, the birth certificate construct, the citizen. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't operate like a citizen. It can operate as a creditor. It can operate as a nominee for you, the living man or woman. The nominee status of the 98 series grantor trust is of paramount importance. Remember, you transferred energy onto the Monopoly board through a bank that is operating as a nominee for the living man, woman. So the only way you can get the energy back is by creating another nominee player piece on the Monopoly board. That nominee player piece is a 98 series grantor trust. It can file tax returns. It can receive taxes redirected from the payers, that's the investment bank's 945 tax modules, to the grantor trust, the 98 series grantor trust. It is a separate playing piece. It is an international playing piece. It's an international trust. It doesn't belong to any country. It has a unique tax reference number, even though it is tax exempt. It has a tax reference number from the United States Treasury. So it's recognized by the United States Treasury as a creditor, as a nominee. So important. The new nominee that you have put together, you've put it on the Monopoly board, can file tax returns and lawfully receive taxes redirected from the IRS that are collecting them from the investment banks under that 945 tax module back to the 98 series grantor trust, 100% lawfully, perfectly in line with all of the securities laws and tax laws. It's pivotal. Without it, you can't do this. And it's not easy to get the 98 series grantor trust. There is a way of getting one set up. It's not a bit of paper. A lot of people think trusts are just bits of paper. It's actually an entity. It's a registered entity. As a foreign trust, it's called a foreign alien trust to the United States. It has a trust indenture. It has the powers to file tax returns as a creditor nominee. Substantially important. It also doesn't have to report taxes because it has an exemption. It's international, it's exempt, it's a creditor, and without it, you can't do signature credit recoupment. Next slide. So you see, the very first thing that you're going to do is if you want to do signature credit recoupment, because that is going to solve the problem that all the families out there that are struggling with the cost of living crisis, those that come on these webinars, those that are referred to us by existing members, they can solve the problem with the Clifford Protocol, with signature credit recoupment. The first step is to identify the energy that's being put on the monopoly board. So from the age of 18 onwards, bank payments, estimate them per year, mortgages, what was the face value of mortgages, loans, credit cards, taxes that were deducted from wages, estimate that, come up with a number. All you have to do is remember the banks that you were operating with from the age of 18. If you can't remember them all, don't worry about it. You've probably got enough that you can remember, and you need to tell us the name of the banks, roughly how much per year, add it up. That is the signature credit that you have left on the monopoly board. The very next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the grantor trust. That grantor trust acts as the nominee for the living man woman. The living man woman becomes the beneficiary of this grantor trust, which is going to file the tax returns. And the first tax return that's going to be sent in is what's called an original issue discount, or an OID. And that OID is going to focus on the signature credit energy that is currently being traded by the investment banks. It's going to identify it. We have an algorithmic system that tracks the signature energy. The banks, the clearing banks to the investment banks, tracks all of the signature energy. Again, I've written a paper on this. You find it at Ecclesia Law on how our system tracks the signature credit energy from the clearing bank to the investment bank, from the investment bank taxes to the United States Treasury. We created an algorithmic system that researches all of that and finds it. Without that, it's very difficult to do as well. So you see, every single transference of energy onto the monopoly board goes on the board at zero. It has a zero creation value. Yeah, so your energy goes on the board at zero. The banks operate as nominees. They trade it. The investment banks use it, what's called hypothecate it. They use it to make more and more and more for themselves. Yeah. But everything on that board has an initial value of zero because it's energy. It doesn't have a value. But as soon as it goes on the monopoly board, it has a future value. And when you are calculating the original issue discount, it's important to realize that the value at the beginning is zero. So if you were to go on the internet and type in, how does 1099 OID work? The internet is going to tell you that if you've bought and sold securities, the difference between the current value of the security and the future value creates an original issue discount tax. And if you've overpaid taxes, you can recoup those overpaid taxes, back up withholding taxes, it's called. And it's going to tell you that you can't do what I'm explaining to you because they don't want you to know. And the reason you can do what I'm explaining is because the value of your signature credit starts at zero. So the difference between the future value and the current value is huge. And that's the value that the investment banks are trading. And you see the new nominee, which you've put on the Monopoly board, which is the 98 series grantor trust, is entitled to the recoupment of the taxes that the investment banks have paid to the United States Treasury via the 1099 OID. It sets it up at the United States Treasury so that the Treasury, and when they check it with their 810 algorithm, they will know that this credit, this tax, is actually belongs to the grantor trust that filed the 1099 OID. Now, let's suppose that you have some of your signature credit energy was being traded by Goldman Sachs, one of the biggest investment banks in the world. And let's suppose that they were paying, they had paid in 2025, let's say they paid 10 billion in taxes to the United States Treasury, right? Let's just suppose that was the number. They paid 1 billion under their 945 tax ledger, and they paid 9 billion on all the other tax ledgers. Let's imagine that our membership was trying to recoup taxes of 1.5 billion, where the payer is Goldman Sachs. They paid 1 billion in taxes on the 945 ledger. They've paid 9 billion on other tax ledgers. We've got a claim in for all of our members of 1.5 billion. So we're 0.5 of a billion down, aren't we? Using the form 4506T, the trustee that operates the 98 series grantor trust can command the United States Treasury to move taxes that have already been received by it from the other tax modules onto the 945 tax module, so that the 1.5 billion becomes funded. That tells you, or it should tell you, because it tells me this, that the 945 tax module is the priority tax module. And if the trustee that's operating for the creditor entity, that's the 98 series grantor trust, can command the United States Treasury using form 4506T to move taxes that they've already received onto the 945 ledger, that should tell you that the 945 ledger not only is the lawful ledger to recoup the taxes from, but it is the priority ledger out of all of the ledgers. Interesting. I think it's at that point that Dan Needle stopped debating me. Now you see there is a lot of research that has to go on in the background. We've got to find the clearing bank's tax reference numbers, the investment bank's tax reference numbers, the securities that all of your signature energy is in. They've all got different reference numbers. We've got an algorithm that finds all of that, links it all up. By the way, it's very similar to the algorithm that the IRS uses, their 810 algorithm. Next slide. So let's go through why this is lawful, right? I said earlier on in the webinar that the person, the citizen, the birth certificate construct is a banker. If you read the Bills of Exchange Act, go and put it in your AI system, go and get it, search the internet for it, it will tell you that the Bills of Exchange Act only really applies to bankers, right? Because persons, a body of persons are bankers. So the person is the birth certificate construct, yeah? We established that earlier on. So every person, which by the way is an artificial construct on the Monopoly board, is actually a banker. Has to be a banker to issue the credit, the deposits, because those deposits can't come to the clearing banks unless there was a banker depositing them. So the person is a banker. Bills of Exchange Act 1882 defines it. UCC Article 3 also defines what the holder in due course is. So the nominee, which is the banks, are holding your credit as the holder in due course, right? But they're not really the holder in due course because there's never been a claim made. When you set the grantor trust up, the the 98 series grantor trust and file the 1099 OID, now the grantor trust becomes the holder in due course of the abandoned signature credit energy. It confirms that in UCC Article 3. Then you look at IRS Publication 1212. Now, IRS Publication 1212 confirms that if a nominee files a Form 1099 OID, it becomes the holder in due course and is entitled to the credit, the taxes on the credit that's being used. It corrects the ledger, it corrects the record. IRS Publication 1212, substantially important document. And then you've got the Revenue Procedure 2002 to 26, which gives the 98 series grantor trust, the trustee of it, the power, the authority to move those taxes. Remember the taxes that you can move from the investment bank's payer modules, taxpayer modules, onto the 945 payer taxpayer module. Under Revenue Procedure 2002 to 26, it confirms that the fiduciary for a holder in due course creditor entity 98 series grantor trust has that authority under Revenue Procedure 2002-26. It's all 100% lawful. Next slide. Now you see, if you then look at the Treasury authorization, they run an algorithmic system. This is the 810 algorithm, and they make sure that the creditor, that's the 98 series grantor trust, is entitled to the taxes that they have already received. And if it is, which it is in the way we do it, if it is entitled to the taxes recouped back to it, then they will send those taxes to a bank account that has been set up for that 98 series grantor trust, and they will do it through what they call the IRS TRIAS 310. It's what they call an ACH or a Fedwire transaction. So again, the IRS TRIAS 310 confirms that if the creditor has turned up, filed 1099 OID through the grantor trust as the holder in due course, in accordance with IRS Publication 1212, the IRS is commanded to pay or to send, because it's not really a payment, it's just another ledger movement, recoupment of taxes to the grantor trust bank account through the IRS TRIAS 310 system. And we'll cover in a moment what happens to it after it is received at the 98 grantor trust. But remember, this whole system is just ledgers. There's no money of substance. It's just computer ledgers. It's just ledgers being moved around. That's all it really is, because there's no money of substance. If you're going to play the game of Monopoly, you've got to realize that the whole game is artificial. It's all ledgers. It's all one computer. It's like one great big computer game. Next slide. So a lot of people say, well, it sounds amazing, Ian, but how do I actually get my hands on this recoupment so I can use it? Well, we now put a third player piece on the Monopoly board. So remember, you're sitting at the Monopoly board. You're playing the game. Normally, you're playing it through the citizen, the person. That's the player piece. We put a second player piece on the board, which is going to file the tax returns. That is the 98 series grantor trust that becomes the nominee, the true creditor, that is entitled to that redirection of taxes. Now we're going to put a third player piece on the Monopoly board. We're going to put what's called an asset fortress protocol. It is another 98 series grantor trust. It's the third player piece on the Monopoly board. It has a bank account. It now is going to operate as the treasury, the private treasury for you. You, as the living man woman, become the beneficiary for this asset fortress protocol. I've done a whole interview on the asset fortress protocol. There are documents that explain it. I've recently done an interview with Andy Benson on how to use it. What is it? How does it work? It's like an hour and a half interview. I urge you, if you want to know more about the Asset Fortress Protocol, go and watch that interview. Go and read the documents on Ecclesia Law Institute, all about it. Basically, it is a private treasury. It is an international grantor trust. It doesn't have to comply with digital ID. It doesn't have to pay taxes. It can receive the funds from the player piece number 2, 98 series grantor trust. It can receive those in, and it can spend and recoup. So it becomes your engine. It becomes the infinity part of this program. You spend from there and recoup back. You spend from there, recoup back. This is the part of the presentation that is that if you follow this protocol, will transform your finances going forward. This part of the presentation gives you the ability to put assets into the Asset Fortress Protocol with no constraint and very limited reporting, if any. You've also got a private treasury which doesn't pay taxes, that doesn't get involved in digital ID, that can spend and recoup. So you get a bank account for the Asset Fortress Protocol and a bank card. It's just like using the bank card that you use now, no different, but no taxes, no reporting. Use it internationally. Whatever you spend is signature credit leaving that Asset Fortress Protocol, which can be recouped back. Spend, recoup, spend, recoup. Next slide. So you've got no digital ID problem. You've got financial privacy. The player piece, the third player piece, is separate from the citizen. It's separate from the constraints of the cabal, the government. It's your private treasury that sits on the monopoly board that enables you to play the game in privacy with an infinite money cycle of the spend and recoup cycle, and also transferring titles to property, to investments, to whatever it is that you want to put into the trust. A proper trust, not a bit of paper, a true, like a sovereign nation that is out there as an independent nation, with its own infrastructure and its own spending and recouping cycles. Next slide. And it is a massive pivot. It's not regulated by the government. It doesn't matter whether whichever country you're operating in, it's operating individually and internationally with an international bank account. So you can go and use it anywhere in the world, and there's no track and trace of it. There's no digital ID connected to it. And I keep saying that because I know what's coming down the pathway towards us. Massive problems with digital ID. If you think that you've got freedom of what you spend your money on at the moment, you wait for the next 5 years. You won't be permitted to spend your money unless it's already signed off by the cabal. And if they don't want you to spend, they'll just stop you from spending, but not in the Asset Fortress Protocol. Next slide. Now, in order to put all of these player pieces together, the Asset Fortress, the 98 series grantor trust, the Clifford Protocol, and everything I've spoken about, there's one piece of the jigsaw that's missing, and that is the Envoy Protocol. You need to make sure that the living man woman has the right to be the beneficiary of these grantor trusts, can separate as much as possible from the tax-paying entity, which is the citizen, can take a modicum of control over the person, over the citizen, by establishing what's called the Office of the General Executor, that makes a declaration of standing, and that is the Envoy Protocol. Again, I've done a whole interview on the Envoy Protocol. It's on the ROS Media platform. There is a technical document which explains it A through Z. Why is it part of this program? You really need three things. You need the Envoy Protocol, you need the Asset Fortress Protocol, and you need the Clifford, or the infinite money or currency creation. It's all pretty much the same protocol. If you have those three, you can run this program. Next slide. So you see, at the moment, most people are playing the game of Monopoly, and they are permanently putting new energy on the Monopoly board. They're going out to earn it. Whatever they're doing, they're putting new energy on the board, and they don't realize that they're abandoning that energy, which can all come back. And the way you get it back is you do exactly what the banks do. You operate a structure as a nominee. You create a nominee structure. That nominee structure is two grantor trusts: the tax filing grantor trust and the asset fortress grantor trust. Now you can operate as a banker. So when you go at that dinner table and you sit there and you ask all the other guys at the table, what do you do? And they all say, well, we're all bankers. You say, well, yeah, I actually own a bank. I run a bank. And you wouldn't be lying. Next slide. And as I've said many times, and I'm going to keep on saying it because it's so important. Just imagine that if you had 1 million, 5 million, 10 million of abandoned energy on the Monopoly board right now, and you could recoup that and spend it by signature credit, recoup it, spend it, recoup it, spend it. You wouldn't need to go and earn new revenues, run a business, get a job, carry on with a job. You would be able to run this and recycle that energy, put it out, recoup it, put it out through signature, recoup it. In cycles, infinity. Next slide.
And here we are to the top 7 questions that we had come through. Just a couple of things. As you mentioned, Ian, we do have a lot of new people who have joined us today, and some of them have probably gone and everything, but don't panic, everyone. As I said earlier, this is being recorded. It will be available on our platform as well, along with additional handouts, but also you can find that paper on Ecclesiastical Law website as well. But I am going to email you a link and all other additional links as well to get you to all the right places that Ian had described earlier on today. And for those who are regulars as well, maybe it's your second time or third time that you've come back. I hope the information now, you really started to understand what Ian has been explaining. This is phenomenal information that he's done, that he's researched. And the thing is, I've said this previously, let's see how many people may remember, but you will only retain 20% of what Ian has shared today. That's why we encourage you to come back time and time again to all the webinars, but not forgetting that this is being recorded. It's going to be on the platform, and you can go back to it at a convenient time and go through it all over again. But let's get into the top 7 questions. Ian, are you ready to rock and roll into these ones? Brilliant. Okay. So question number 1. Since the global commercial system is operating in a state of Chapter 11 bankruptcy under HJR 192, how can I stop acting as a pauper and start operating as a master on the Monopoly board?
Well, you need the Envoy protocol. You need to instruct. And by the way, I haven't explained this. That we have a huge department of people working on this, right? So it's not just me and Sims. There's over 50 in our organization, and we have a tax filing office. We also have a professional tax filing license. So we have a license holder that has a license to file all these tax returns with the United States Treasury as what's called a tax preparer. We have licenses to run all the software with the IRS. So this isn't all done on paper. It's all done electronically. So we've already got all that infrastructure. We've got all the know-how, and we have had results. If you know the story, last year we were sabotaged by some internal pirates. We had 600 million confirmed recoupments from the IRS. IRS confirmed before a sabotage event happened. I'm not going to go into that. I've talked about it many times. It's on ROS Media. It's in documents. It's in memos and all sorts of things for our membership. The first question is, how do you do this? Well, Fortunately, you don't have to do very much. All you have to do is enroll in the Envoy protocol, the Asset Fortress protocol, and the, let's call it the Currency Creation protocol, which is based on the Clifford protocol. You need to go and find your records, go back into your memory and look in there. And I know it's difficult to go back to the age of 18. It doesn't matter. You don't have to get it precise. Just try and remember the banks that you were operating with. What did you do with them? Roughly speaking, how much did you spend on bank payments year by year? Which banks did you do it with? What mortgages, loans, credit cards, etc. Once you've got that, then you can do this, right? So you can put those new player pieces on the Monopoly board. You can put a 98 series grantor trust, which is going to file the tax returns with our team that's going to do it all for you. And then you can put another piece on the Monopoly board, which is the Asset Fortress protocol. So how do you do this? Well, you basically, you go ahead and enroll in the protocols that I've just explained. And then you can stop acting as the pauper. You can start acting as the master, the banker. You can set your own banker up. You've already got it. It's just it's incomplete. You need those two extra pieces, the Asset Fortress and the 98 series grantor trust. Now you can start running it like a bank runs it. And that's what's missing. That's how you stop operating as the pauper and start operating as the master or the banker.
Lovely. Thank you for that. Actually, you've also answered another question because someone actually submitted a question upon registration is where would someone actually start? And you've answered that question as well. So thank you for that. Question number 2, how does the separation of the living soul from the birth certificate construct allow an individual to enjoy the use of assets without being personally liable for commercial debts or state taxes?
Well, I didn't go into this in a lot of detail because otherwise these webinars get far too long. But the Envoy protocol, what it does is it makes a declaration that the agent, that's the living man, woman, is the agent for the birth certificate construct. The agent has rescinded the fraudulent use of the name. That's the family name, the surname. It's called clausula rebus sextantibus. It's a very long Latin phrase, which basically means you've woken up to a mistake and you're correcting the records. You make that declaration. You create what's called the Office of the General Executor. Because the person, the citizen, is a decedent estate, like a trust or an estate, it operates in probate. And what you can do is you can operate it as the General Executor, but occupying the Office of General Executor. That then cleans up the agency. The agency doesn't go away. You can start using the agency. Remember I said the living man, woman is the agent for the birth certificate construct. The Envoy protocol cleans it up. Creates the environment where you can use it to your advantage. You can never get rid of the agency, but you can diminish the threat and the power of agency that the cabal use against you, and you can use it for your benefit because you want actually to be the agent of the birth certificate construct, because it's the birth certificate construct that issued all of those signatures. So you don't want to get rid of it, you just want to control it, and that's how you do it. And then you can shift all of the assets, properties, anything of any value that has a title, you can shift it into the Asset Fortress protocol. That's what the super rich do. That's what the really smart, wealthy families have been doing for years, using private trusts, putting the assets in there. There's an old saying, is you own nothing and control everything. And that's what you can do with the Asset Fortress protocol.
Lovely. Thank you for that. Question 3. Is it possible to recoup millions in abandoned signature credit and credit energy generated from mortgages, loans and utility payments since the age of majority?
Well, there is a restraint per grant or trust of $10 million. So the IRS algorithmic system restrains recoupment of signature credit up to 10 million, right? Now, it doesn't mean that if you've got a larger recoupment claim than that, you can't do it. It's per trust. So you remember I said number 2 player piece is a grantor trust, 98 series grantor trust. That has a limit of $10 million recoupment because the algorithmic system the IRS's algorithmic system constrains it. So it's basically that. Is it possible to recoup millions? Yes. Remember, you're not recouping physical substance money. Nobody's going to drive around your house and offload some gold bars, on your front doorstep. There is no money. It's just ledgers. It's numbers on ledgers. That is what's going on. So yes, it is possible, constrained to $10 million per grant or trust that files those 1099 OIDs.
Okay, and can I just clarify? I know this sounds crazy because there's other countries uses dollar, right? But we're talking about US dollar.
US dollars, yeah.
Right, I just want to be that very clear because some countries might go, oh, does that mean the Canadian dollar or the Australian dollar? So I just want to be very, very clear. 10 million US dollars. Thank you for that, Ian. Yeah. Question number 4. Can the Asset Fortress Protocol hold assets in fee simple title to place them beyond the reach of state registries, liens, and jurisdictional overreach?
Well, it's a great question. Suppose you can remove all the debt. So you recoup the signature credit. You remove the debt. So there's no mortgages, loans, credit cards because you've removed all of those because you've discharged them by recouping signature credit into your asset fortress. You then use that to discharge the debts. So now you've got property. No, again, I could go on about this for ages because it's a really big subject. There are different titles at play here, right? Property has always got 2 titles. You've got legal title and you've got equitable title. The Monopoly Board operates on equitable title in most cases. So when people say, I own a house, look, I've got the deeds to the house. No, you don't own it. What you've got is the equitable title to the property. You can use the property. Now, the actual legal title is never with the occupant. It's always with the cabal. They generally have the legal title. That's why the land registries are set up, right? Because they have the legal title. You can control the equitable title and put that into the Asset Fortress Protocol, but you may or may not be able to put the legal title in, which is fee simple, by the way. That's the underlying ownership of the thing, because it depends who's got a superior claim against that. Remember that in 1933, the entire Monopoly Board was mortgaged to the cabal, those that control the Monopoly Board. They've got all the legal titles because they took a mortgage out over them. They give back to the people, well, to the citizens, I should say, the equitable title, the use of the things. And this is going to shatter everyone out there, right? But it doesn't really matter. Nobody on this webinar and nobody, unless they run a church, owns anything. 0. Your house, all you've got is the equitable title to it. The car, the equitable title. The title that gives you the ability to use it. You don't own it. You can just use it. So you move the equitable titles into your Asset Fortress Protocol. If you are lucky enough to have land that doesn't already have legal title held by the Crown, by the state, by the cabal, you can move that into the Asset Fortress Protocol. Churches often have the legal title in the name of the church because the Crown, the cabal, those that control the Monopoly Board weren't able to move that legal title away from the churches. But in most cases, there are some small examples, a small percentage of people in the US that have allodial title land deeds that you can actually reverse. I'm going to do a webinar on it going forward because that's a small percentage, but it's a very high number. So if you're in the US, you might be able to get a allodial title to the property and move that into the Asset Fortress. But typically what you're doing is you're moving the equitable title to the property in there, not the legal title, because it's impossible to do it.
Okay, thank you for that. Question number 5. Does the use of the 98 Series International Grantor Trust and corrective 1099 OID filings provide a lawful mechanism to redirect withheld taxes from institutional nominees to a private treasury?
Well, based on all the research that I've done, it's the only lawful way of doing it. Any other way of doing it is unlawful, and it's going to cause massive problems potentially. By doing it this way, you're playing the game of Monopoly exactly how the rules have been laid out. By the way, everything that I've researched is available for you to find out. If you want to go and do all the research I've done and check it all out, you'll see that what I've been telling you is 100% true. The problem is, and they even said it, there's a guy called Mandel House, who's a really big political figure about 100 years ago. And he famously said, only 1 in a million will figure out how this works. And he's absolutely true. But the information is all out there in the public domain. You can go and find it all, but they've just disguised it. And it's not easy to join all the dots up. But it's all out there.
Correct. Thank you for that. Question number 6. How does the Envoy Protocol utilize the international law principle of clausula rebus sic stantibus to rescind presumed agency to the state and occupy the office of General Executor? And I'm sure my Latin teacher will be so proud of me pronouncing that.
Well, the person, the citizen, is this decedent estate, right? It's dead. It can't be alive. You can't talk to it, yeah? Remember, you take your birth certificate out for dinner, you can't have a chat with it, can you? It's just a decedent estate. And it's registered to the cabal, to the crown, to the state that you're in. So what happens is that if you want to correct what is going on, at the moment there is a presumption that you're operating it as executor de son tort. That's another Latin phrase. The executor of all the wrongs, because it's being used in fraud deliberately. I've done a whole webinar on this. You're using the name of the decedent estate like it's you. It's not you. You're holding yourself out as if it were you. It's not you. And everything that you've entered into from the age of majority onwards is been operating in fraud, in identity fraud. So you've got to clean that up. And that is the clausula rebus sic stantibus. It's the cleaning up of the record. You made a mistake. You're cleaning it up. You're then going to occupy the office of the General Executor. And that office, by the way, if you think about it, the office of Prime Minister, the office of the President, every single position, every single title on the Monopoly Board has an office. So you are occupying that office as the living mamoon, as the General Executor of a decedent estate, because the estate itself is permanently in debt and permanently dead, which is why it has a General Executor. So you're just cleaning it up with the asset, with the combination of the Envoy Protocol and the Asset Fortress Protocol.
Lovely, thank you for that. And question number 7. Can the spend and recruitment cycle truly create a self-sustaining infinite loop where every expenditure from a private treasury becomes a new credit creation event?
Well, the interesting thing about signature credit is that if you think of it now, you can just hold your phone up and it makes a digital payment, yeah? What we call a payment. That is all because it's all based on the contract. When you entered into it with the bank, you made a contract, and that contract enabled the signature. It's the intention to make a transaction. Now, the Asset Fortress Protocol is created. The grantor of the Asset Fortress Protocol is the citizen, is this birth certificate construct. The trustee of the Asset Fortress Protocol is the citizen, is the birth certificate construct. The beneficiary of the Asset Fortress Protocol is the living man or woman. So every time the Asset Fortress Protocol makes a transaction, uses the signature, it is adding more signature credit onto the board, Monopoly board, that can be recouped. So yes, the answer is yes. And you see the ledger, because the Asset Fortress Protocol has another ledger. If you've got $1 million or $5 million or $10 million sitting in the Asset Fortress Protocol bank account, that's a ledger, yeah? It can issue negotiable instruments, promises to pay up to the value of 10 million. And it puts those out back on the Monopoly board as new signature credit, abandoned, and then recoups it back through the first of the grantor trust, that then moves those recoupments into the second grantor trust, which is the asset fortress. And it just goes round in a loop, which is, by the way, what you're already doing. The only difference is you're going round and round the monopoly board and not recouping the signature credit, the taxes. You keep putting new energy on the board, keep putting new energy on the board, keep putting new energy on the board, when what you could be doing is recouping the energy you've already put on the board, putting it back out on the board and recouping it back, putting it out on the board, recouping it back, meaning that you can spend your energy on other things.
Lovely. Well, thank you for answering that question. And don't forget, everyone, I will be sending you an email with a link. So if you have any further questions that you'd like Ian to answer, then submit those questions and I'll make sure that gets over to Ian and along with Andy Benson, because Andy will be asking Ian those questions in the next few days. So don't forget, watch out for the email as well. Okay, thank you for that, Ian. I'll just jump on to the next slide. Next step.
So if you want to ask questions about anything that I've talked about, if you want to have a meeting with one of our specialists, our consultants, click this link. This link will come out, will it, Sims? I guess it comes out.
Yes, no, it'll be included in the email. Yeah.
So you click the link, it takes you through to a bookings page. We've got a number of specialists that you can book in with. You'll already be pre-allocated to a specialist, and that's, I think, the page we're going to show now. So you click through, and it comes to, and whichever one of our consultants is already been pre-allocated to you. If you want to book that meeting, go into the calendar, book the meeting.
Yeah, and I'm just showing. So what you do, you just click on pause. I couldn't hear you very well, Ian. You were dropping out slightly, unless I was dropping out. But yeah, for example, we have the lovely Paul Packer. You just click on there and it will have all his dates that he's available in timings. But if for some reason his timings and your timing don't match up, then of course, as you can see, I've just clicked on another link there where it says can't find a suitable appointment. Click here, and here you see all our rest of the lovely team that we have available who'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Okay. Links.
Some important links. Yeah, you've got an abundance of information. There's no shortage of information. We make it all out there. It's all open source. We don't hide anything. We don't have, come into our organization and then you can only when you're in and you've paid some funds or you've made donations, can you find out what we're doing? No, we put it all out there, open source. You've got the Great Escape protocols. So all of the main protocols, the foundational protocols on the first link. You've got explainer video, which I think explains all of the protocols. You've got the interviews. I've done interviews on each of the protocols. I've done interviews on past webinars. I've done interviews after every webinar, answering all the questions that come in. So you could immerse yourself on ROS Media for quite a few hours if you really wanted to. And really immerse yourself in the whole subject if that's what you want to do. Then you've got the research papers that are all at Ecclesia Law Institute, a whole abundance, over 50 research papers that explain all parts of this monopoly board, how it all works, all broken down into categories. We've got a Telegram channel that I'd urge you to get into because there's lots of updates, lots of news, lots of information that we put in. There's actually 4 Telegram channels, but there's one main one, which is the Winning at Monopoly Telegram channel. And then you want to talk about your channel, Sims?
Oh, it's amazing. No, of course. There you go. It's amazing. You should be on there. So we've had, I've got a lot of advocates that I manage. And in fact, majority, I would say, of our attendees today have come through our advocates who have shared either their standard referral link or the webinar link. So each of our advocates have their own webinar referral link as well. So that's where they come through. I do a lot of updates on there as well, any additional information. So if you are an advocate and you haven't joined yet, why not? Naughty, go on there. But don't worry, I'll make sure that all our attendees today will have access to those links as well. One other thing, Ian, because as you know, one of the most popular questions we do get is timelines as well. So I know that you and Andy actually did an interview about the timelines, and I have also going to be including that in that email as well.
Yep.
But yes, so there's a lot of information I share from an advocate perspective as well. Good information. Okay, next slide.
Yep. Lots of handouts. I think they come on the email, but they're also all available at Ecclesia Law Institute. So look out for that website on the email that you're going to get. And I think you have these handouts that come out with it. But they're all on the Ecclesia Law as well. If you want to visit there, they're all available on that website.
Yeah, the handouts actually, Ian, will actually go through on the platform. I don't email those out because they are pretty large files, and I want to make sure everybody. Yeah, so where before some members may not have received it because they are large files, and some people's emails may have limitations. So what we do now, so as you said, they're on Ecclesia Law, which everyone will receive the link and will be available on the platform. So when you want to go back to recap the presentation. So when you log in as a member, on the left-hand side, it will say on demand. So click on that button, you will see podcasts, and then you will see webinar library. If you click on the webinar library and type in today's title, all that information will be there as well. So it's all there. It just makes it so much easier, because I want to make sure everybody gets that email as well. So there you go. So next slide.
We are building a sovereign nation, and I'm going to be presenting this as the ROS Sovereign Nation, and the Freedom Plan is a webinar that's going to be coming out soon. In a nutshell, without spoiling the webinar, we are building our independent community with its own power, with its own communications, with its own health systems, with its own currency, with its own water, food, everything that you need to sustain. We're building that, and we're financing it through signature credit tax recoupment. So I'm going to be presenting that in probably a couple of weeks' time, maybe the end of April. I'll be doing that. We've got a few other webinars already scheduled coming out on Saturdays. And basically, in order to get to that number, which is, by the way, 500,000 is my target to get into our nation, a sovereign nation with its own recognition as a sovereign nation, like the Military Order of Malta. I'll be explaining all about how they got sovereign nation status with passports, diplomats, all that stuff that I know a lot of people want. I'm going to be explaining how all that works on that webinar. And in order to get there, we have two initiatives to get more members to join our community. One is the webinar reward scheme, which I think we're going to touch on in a minute. And the other is the advocate referral program. Now, we're doing a lot of work on making the advocate marketing really easy for the advocates. Sims, you had it up, so give us the elevator speech on why should people become an advocate.
Well, the thing is, it all starts with education, and a lot of people who came on here today weren't aware until you explained what is happening and what people can do. So really, and a lot of people who are on here today, as well as being advocates themselves, were referred by someone who's going through the protocol, and it all starts with education. Without all this information, how can anyone move forward? And it's all about freedom, isn't it, Ian? It's all about abundance. So what are the steps to do it? And it all starts with education. The individuals, the advocates and the referrals were given, the opportunity of freedom because they chose to act. So this is your opportunity to choose to act, to help someone, maybe friends or family, or if you're part of a network, or maybe a leader of a network, this information is valuable. And as Ian says, he shares this so freely. I think other organizations, well, not there's many organizations out there, but from an education point of view, people would charge for it, but not Ian. He's giving this out freely, and this is your opportunity to act and help your friends and family or a network that you know to access this information. And of course, if someone that you know decides to instruct Ross with a protocol and makes a donation fee, then there is a remuneration side of that as well. So, there is a webinar that I will be doing that I will start again on a weekly basis. So I don't want to take up too much time. But if you think, I came on here today thanks to a family member or a friend or someone part of a network, and I wasn't aware of this information, then help someone else. And by starting off, signing up as an advocate, and start from there, really. If we go, I don't know if there's anything you wish to add on that, Ian, because I said I don't want to really take it over. I go into a lot more detail on my webinars. But here we have, from a remuneration point of view, if you are an advocate. Now, there are two levels. There's advocate and advocate originator, which I will explain a little bit in a moment. But from an advocate perspective, we have a lot of advocates already from all different walks of life. Some of them just referring their friends and family. A lot of them are in affiliate marketing or multi-level marketing, and have worked incredibly hard to build their network up as well. So here we have from an earnings opportunity, if you referred one member, okay, and they were, say, doing a total annual recruitment of $250,000, and when we say dollars, it's US dollars, okay. There is not only a remuneration at the front end, but there's also at the back end as well. And that is your opportunity from a back end remuneration. But of course, if you think of that member, what Ian has explained today, spend and recoup. So if you look over a period of 5 years, that's what the back end opportunity earnings are. But now if you sort of take 5 members or 10 members, etc., as you can see, this is an opportunity from an earnings perspective. But as I said, I go into a lot more detail about this because I don't want to take up too much of anyone's time. Now, I also mentioned about you may know someone who's a leader of a specific network, and you think, well, actually, their network and the leader himself may benefit. So then one would sign up as an advocate originator. And as you can see here what the opportunities from an earnings point of view is. So just say, five leaders, for example, and they each refer 10 members. Then as you can see, that's the opportunity of a remuneration point of view. I've spoken to a lot of network marketers and those in multi-level marketing. And as I mentioned earlier, they have built their network over a long period of time. And some organizations they may work with could be around, say, 6 months or 12 months. What Ian's trying to do, he is building a nation, and we are going to be around for a very, very long time. And what these network marketers have noticed, they can see this plan, because Ian has talked about his plan, what he wants to do moving forward. So it's a very, very exciting time for them, and also an exciting time for you. So it's a great opportunity to sign up, not just as an advocate, but also as an advocate originator. I know that really wasn't an accelerated pitch just there, but I'm trying to cover everything so people just get a true understanding, Ian. So as I said, I don't want to do too much of a takeover. But this is something else you mentioned about webinar invitation rewards. So shall I leave that one to you as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've been asked a few times where people are struggling, and there is a donation to get the protocols established and enroll in them, and a lot of people are saying, look, they're struggling. Their budget doesn't stretch to getting started. So what can they do to defray the donation? Well, what they can do is they can invite people to our webinars. And for every attendee of a webinar, it's easy to send out a link. You can, and we're going to make it viable for you to send it out. I think it already is on social media. If for every attendee, you get £10 reward point. So if you had 100 people coming to our webinars going forward, that's £1,000 that you're going to be able to set off against the enrolment of any of the protocols, the donation for enrolling. So, you know, this becomes, I think, an opportunity. You could actually finance all of your suite, your Asset Fortress, your Envoy, your currency creation. If you've got enough people to come to webinars, you could actually finance all of your donations through the webinar reward scheme. So that's why we launched it. A, we want to get more people in, and B, we want to give people who haven't got a budget available the opportunity of using the reward scheme to bring more people into the webinars.
Absolutely. And also to the advocates, just to make you aware, you're part of this as well. So you've got the reward scheme and plus the remuneration as well as described. So just to make you aware of that. Q&A. Actually, before I do that, Ian, I know you wanted me to share a website with all, because you just talked about the, let me just go back to that slide actually. So just in case up and coming webinars and everything, because I know we're going to have one next Saturday and that will be coming up. And I will share this link so everyone can see it. But as you can see, this is our webinar library that we have right here. Tells you about the earn £10 credit per hour and all the other webinars that we've had in the past. You've got watch the webinar preview as well. So there's a lot of work that's been going on, and well done to the teams at the back. But if you want to add to this, Ian?
Well, what we're doing is we're running a webinar every Saturday, but they're in multiple countries. We've got the UK, USA, we've got Canada, we've got Australia, we've got New Zealand. And what I'm going to be doing, as I already have started, is to identify the key problems that are occurring in each of those countries and then running a webinar to solve it. So, I mean, last week I did the landlords, I've done council tax, I've done inheritance tax, I've done pensions, all manner of problems that people are experiencing. Next week we're doing void mortgage. So how to void a mortgage. And that of course will apply in all countries. So it'll either be country specific, and you'll be able to search on this website for the webinars in your country that have occurred already in your country, or they might be like today's webinar is applicable for every country. So, you know, you'll be able to find it. And if you want to introduce people again on the reward scheme, you can share this this website with all of the past webinars on there. And people don't have to wade through an hour and a half, 2 hour webinar. There's shorts. There's the introduction to the webinar. There's the actual webinar itself, and then there's the Q&A, which is what I'm doing with Andy Benson on the ROS Media platform. After every webinar, there's the Q&A. So you've got the whole suite. If you want to recap, if you want to share this with other people that might be interested in getting to getting into this subject and getting themselves into the Republic of Old Souls and enrolling in all the protocols, what better way of doing it is to share this website with them if they want to learn about what we're doing. I think this is probably this, and the ROS Media platform is by far the best way to do it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, thank you for that. I just thought, there was a website we wanted to share. And talking about Q&A, you will be doing a Q&A section. You could call it the post webinar as such, for any additional questions that you may have. So Ian's going to be doing that with Andy Benson, who's head of ROS Media. So you will receive a form from this particular email address, which is simone.p@ros.co.uk. pma.is. And can I just say, please do not reply back to this email. That email address is specifically to send out information after each webinar. So please don't reply back with any additional questions because this email doesn't really get monitored. It's just information to be sent out. And as I mentioned, a follow-up session with Ian and Andy will be scheduled, and then you can review that at a later date. It will become available at some point in the next few days. And of course, thank you for attending today's webinar, and we do appreciate your feedback. So on the form, there is going to be a section. If you could add your feedback, that would be great. Just takes a moment, and that feedback does make a huge difference, because we always want to improve our webinars each week, and your feedback will make a difference. But before we finish for the day, Ian, again, thank you so much for your time. I know for a lot of people it's massive light bulb moments, but before we finish, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't get that excited these days because I'm 60 now and I've seen a lot and done a lot. But I am excited by this, and that is that we're working on an Ian Clifford avatar. Now, if you'd said this to me 30 years ago, that somebody could have a meeting with me and I didn't have to be there, I'd say that's impossible, right? So I've often said, wouldn't it be good if I could clone myself? I'd get so much more done, yeah? Well, the Ian avatar is coming very soon. And the Ian avatar, you'll be able to ask questions to the Ian avatar about anything that I talk about, all of the Monopoly Board stuff, the art of legal warfare, the Monopoly Board of Commerce, all the protocols, how things work. You'll be able to have access to that. And you can even use it in combination with another AI system, which we're also working on at the moment. So if you're interested in, for example, voiding your mortgage, but you don't want to, you don't really know how to do that, which by the way, I'm going to be explaining that on next Saturday's webinar. You will be able to engage with an AI system that will assist you every step of the way throughout the whole process to do everything that you need to do to void a mortgage. Or if you've got a problem with the landlord taxes, which is what I explained, overviewed and presented last webinar, you will be able to access an AI system that will enable you to issue out all the documents, court documents, responses to lawyers, whoever it is. We're building that as well, and I'm excited to do that because I remember thinking many, many years ago when I was running my wealth management practice, and I had a nationwide wealth management practice, and I had thousands of clients who used to come and see me about all their finances. And one of them said to me, Ian, don't refer me to anybody else. I only want to see you. And it's like, well, how can I see everybody? I can't have that interaction with everybody in my wealth management practice. So if I'd had an Ian avatar, 25, 30 years ago, it would have made my life a lot more easy because you can be in more than one place at the same time. And that is going to be made available to accommodate all of the knowledge that I'm imparting on the webinars, everything in the Ecclesia Law technical. It's going to have all of that knowledge in it. It's going to have all the cute questions and answers that I give to Andy. Andy and I talk about on our interviews. And every new protocol, every new solution that we roll out, it will know how to do it. And not only will it know how to do it, but it will enable the aspects of the protocols which are not facilitated, things like voiding mortgages, things like the engaging with tax offices if it's the landlord tax problem. All of that can be run through the AI system where the member, the envoy, the Republic of Old Souls envoy can run their own case, knowing exactly how to do everything, asking the avatar, and then also where it will actually create all of the required documents. And by the way, these avatars and the AI system will be made available to our envoys. If you're in our platform, you'll have access to the avatar and to the AI system without any charge whatsoever.
Lovely.
So
Thank you very much. Yeah. Exciting times, exciting times. So thank you so much, Ian, for today's presentation. And for those on StreamYard, Facebook and YouTube, I'd like to say thank you so much for joining us today and have a wonderful weekend. So I shall end now and I'll get to Instagram in a moment. So for those, thank you very much. Take care and goodbye.